Hi, so I'm Nikki Howarth and I'm a director at Harbour Family Law and head of the Clifton office. And for our podcast today, I'm joined by my two lovely colleagues, Ros and Fiona.
Hi, I'm Ros White. I'm a senior associate and I'm at our Clevedon office.
And I'm Fiona. And it's good to be here.
Absolutely. So we thought it might be an interesting topic to talk about is recordings. And what we do with those recordings. So that could be a video recording or it could be an audio recording. It could be done secretly or it could be done overtly when someone knows they're being recorded, and whether we think that that's a good idea or not. I don't know about you guys, but quite often a client comes in to see me and they might say, oh, I had a massive argument with my ex last night and I secretly pressed record on my phone whilst that argument was happening. And I think it's really useful because it shows them off in a really bad light. And I don't know that you guys have had similar sorts of examples like that. And we thought it would be a good topic to discuss the sort of the do's and don'ts when it comes to recording.
Absolutely.
Everybody is recording.
Yeah.
Talking about recordings whilst making a recording.
Absolutely.
Everyone's
and we've all got our phones on us these days. You know, people often have just got them all the time. People record everything, take pictures of everything. So it's just a very natural human thing to do now. So it's understandable that it's becoming more of an issue when we're seeing clients and that they're raising these sorts of, you know, bits of evidence that they want to use in their case perhaps to, you know, evidence what they're saying about their ex-partner or the other parent of their child. So
Absolutely.
it's really useful to have an idea about how the court, how we need to think about how we help people understand how the court will look at that evidence and deal with it.
You and I think we've all been doing the job for the same amount of time, haven't we? I mean, this just was an issue that never, ever came up.
No.
But nowadays, like you say, everyone's walking around with a supercomputer in their pocket and it's just so easy to reach for it and press record. And like you say, you can do it secretly or you can do it and tell someone you're doing it. And it just comes up, doesn't it? It does come up more and more.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know whether you've ever had, you know, people coming in now to the meetings for advice and actually saying, can they record in the meeting?
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. And you get the sort of the contrast. People either come in and say, I've got this recording, it's on my phone, do you want to listen to it? Or they say, oh, I think it would be really useful. I was having a conversation with my child the other day. They said they really want to live with me. Next time he says that, shall I press record? Yeah. And it's that kind of, that difference. And maybe it's a good opportunity to sort of talk about, because of course they're different sorts of recordings. So do you want to sort of talk about the different sorts of recordings you could have?
I guess what Fiona was saying, you know, people come in sometimes and for various reasons they want to record our meeting, or they might be seeing a CAFCAS officer within Children Act proceedings and they want to record the meeting with them, or if there is a social worker involved. So there's recordings with professionals, so that's one sort of recording. Again, they can either be covert or they can be very open and ask at the beginning of the meeting if they can record. There's recordings between parties, so typically maybe where you're acting for somebody and they feel that they're not being believed when they're saying about what their ex-partner is doing and how they're behaving towards them. Yeah. They think, oh, I know, I'll get a snippet of that on my mobile phone and I'll just record it, and then people will have to believe what I'm saying about them. There's recording of children, which you mentioned, Nikki, where, you know, there's a worry about what is happening in contact, or a child is expressing a view about something and they want to have a record of that. Yeah. I would say that generally the view by the courts is that is really not a good idea. It's not a good thing to do. It's so risky. Yeah. It can really backfire on your case, and it's just generally thought that it's not a very child-focused way of dealing with things.
And in fact, recent guidance says exactly that, doesn't it? It says it's a really bad idea to as a general rule to record children. And I guess the other one that is an absolute no-no is court.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, before a hearing, whether it's a virtual hearing, which we still have some now, or an in-person hearing, you know, you will have a warning. You know, as solicitors, we have to warn our clients about recording in a court session, in a court hearing. The court will often also give a warning, certainly on a virtual hearing where you're on a Zoom or an MS Teams type hearing. So people will have plenty of warning that it's not to be done. You should not do it.
Well, it's a criminal offence.
And if you do it,
it is.
Your judge will be very unhappy about it. And you could be in real difficulty.
And the reality is, though, is if there is a dispute about what's said in court, you can get the transcript from court, because I mean that's the point. It is being recorded.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
The court has a recording, so that's why.
Yeah.
And I guess that sort of leads on to, when you think about it, what are the main reasons why recording is a bad idea? And I guess one of the main reasons, and one of the reasons why you're not allowed to record what's being said in court, is that these days with technology, it is incredibly easy to edit things,
manipulate
manipulate things, to change things. And so you can suddenly have a quote that the judge said one thing, and then you could put it through some fancy AI program, and then suddenly it comes out with the judge saying something entirely different.
Yeah, and I heard anecdotally about somebody who had recorded someone singing happy birthday and then had put that into AI, and it had been digitally enhanced and made into it sounding like the same voice was shouting and screaming in an argument, and look, this person's crazy, and actually it was all absolutely false and wrong. And you can do all of this with AI, and
it's scary.
Really make it up. It's really scary. So you've got to really question, and I think the courts are, the truthfulness of some recordings, and that's why generally they don't like them. I think generally the rule is do not record.
It's also an issue of what probative value it's going to bring to the case. I think probably we've all seen people that come in with a snippet of something on their phone that they think absolutely categorically proves what they're saying. And we look at it and maybe we see it a bit more objectively, and we can see that maybe it isn't quite as clear in terms of how a judge might view it. And, people also think that just that snippet can be put in evidence, where often you have to say, well, no, it has to be the whole recording. You can't just copy and paste the bits that you want. It has to be the whole thing. Yeah. But really, from the court's point of view, what are you saying with that? What are you trying to prove? And is it really going to the heart of what your case is about? Because if it isn't, with any evidence, really, the court's going to say, well, that's not helping us. We don't need to hear or see that.
And as a general rule, if you're going to have video or audible evidence that's used in court, so something that a child said or something, an argument between the parties or one of the parties had said, you need the court's permission.
Yes.
That will often involve a separate court hearing, which will involve a lot of additional cost. So you have to, as Ros said, be really certain that it's going to really advance your case. And I've had a case recently where we did have some video evidence, and the video evidence was actually pretty useful, but actually the encounter was witnessed by a third party, and the easier way to come to the same conclusion was having a witness statement from the third party, and that's what we ended up doing, and that was the better way to deal with it, rather than kind of going through that whole process of applying to court and getting it adduced. I think the other point is that it feels really unfair. You're, say, having an argument with somebody, you're recording or you're about to press record. You could say some really awful stuff to that other person, really, really provoke them, tip them to the absolute edge. And then just as they're about to fire back at you, that's when you press record. And it's an unlevel playing field.
Are very, very mindful of that as well. And often they will view a recording as saying far more about the person that's done the recording than it does about the person being recorded.
Or that it actually throws up more questions about what is not being shown or hasn't been recorded. What, as you said, what was going on before, it's out of context. It doesn't, it throws up more questions than it provides any answers to.
Yes, yeah. And I think motivation behind a recording is a very big consideration.
I think one thing that I've had, which is difficult because I understand why people do it, but when there's an argument sort of happening between two parties and the child is there, and it's, my immediate thought is how a judge is going to view that in terms of why is your focus on recording this and not stepping away and preventing it from happening when your child is there. We're always looking at it obviously from our client's point of view, and we want to support them and build the best case with them that we can, but we also have to look at it from how a court is going to look at it, and how it could be flipped on its head and actually not be helpful.
I've had a case, very sad. Both parties were literally sort of almost to stop the other person from doing anything. That's why they said they were recording. They were very much like, I'm recording you, well, I'm recording you. And, in the background there was a young crying baby, and it's just tragic to see because the focus was totally in the wrong place. And that's really sad.
So then there was a case, wasn't there, recently where a dad did record a child. I think it was on a car journey.
Yeah, we were discussing that. Yeah, it's interesting.
And it was quite interesting because I think it was considered to be quite helpful in that case, and everyone was like, what? But this goes against everything we've been told. But I think, and the devil is always in the detail. I think that's one thing that's important to say. If you've got a recording, tell your lawyer, but it's
fact specific.
It's so fact specific. And I think in this case, this father and child were on a journey, a long car journey, and the child just started opening up, talking, and really from the heart, and was saying quite a lot of upsetting things, and I think the dad thought, I need to capture this. But I think there was no sort of self-motivation in that recording. I think the focus was very much on the child's feelings, what the child was saying. And actually it was a very helpful recording in terms of being able to understand that child and the feelings. And there was no self-motivation. And I think that's what is quite a defining feature, where someone's recording because this proves my point, or this proves my point, or I'm going to show
the level of questioning that is being
if it's rather than the child giving,
if it's just a dialogue, if it's just a narrative that the child is speaking, as opposed to answers to a lot of questions that they're
and no premeditation at all. They were on a journey, and I think the dad suddenly said, well, I realised actually what was coming out was really important, and so therefore did record it. But I think generally everyone was quite surprised that it was considered to be evidentially valuable, because the general advice is don't record your children.
And children are kind of the lowest of the definitely don't record your children. That's sort of the worst one to do.
The problem is as well, these recordings are made, and then they're there, and depending on what people do with them, it isn't just about whether they come to us in terms of how they can be used as evidence in a case, but are they uploaded on social media? And particularly with children, that then stays there, and you might do that when your children are very young and not think ahead a little bit. But of course, when your child gets older, and if it's still out there,
absolutely,
you've got to think about the potential damage to people beyond that situation that you're in at the moment in court proceedings.
It also, as you said, it raises huge issues about privacy. Absolutely. And it's an absolute invasion of somebody's privacy to record them, whether that's just their voice or video without their knowledge. It as a general rule, it's not something that should be done. And it is an invasion of someone's privacy. So so I think probably to conclude, the advice is, don't record. If a client comes to see us, we will say to them, as a general rule of thumb, it's probably not a good idea. It's probably going to be a bit of opening a can of worms, and it's going to lead to all sorts of issues. But ultimately, it is very fact specific, and there may be isolated occasions, where actually a video recording could be useful. So it wouldn't be a blanket, never do it. It would be, tread with extreme caution.
Yeah, definitely.
And it could seriously backfire if you do. So take advice.
And it may lead to us having to have a bit of a difficult conversation with you about, understanding what you think as a client it's saying about your case, but how we think you might need to approach with caution because of how we think a judge will view it, and that we may be saying to you, our advice is that you don't put this in. So just sort of be prepared to have that conversation about it.
You have one of those really difficult things where you've got someone who comes in, they think they've got
they think they've got a slam dunk, and you're saying, I don't think it is. Really sorry. And it's not to be critical of people either. I mean, it sounds like we're sort of being very negative about it. It like I said before, it is a very human reaction when you are feeling under threat, or particularly if you feel that nobody's believing what you're saying and your voice is just not being heard. Of course, a natural reaction to that is to hit that button when you can then prove what you're saying, but it is just fraught with difficulties.
But manipulating evidence and creating evidence is never going to work, is it?
No.